a look around the corner and you'll find the playoffs. We're going to dissect it all this week on the Indie Ball Report podcast. All right, back again. Episode number, I didn't write it down, so I have to think quickly. It's 233 this week, and for some reason, people keep kicking around, hanging around, including Ryan, who's here again, and probably going to be here indefinitely.
I'm dead inside, so it really doesn't matter what I do.
Well, we're going to continue on, and...
well, that's good.
I was going to say, everyone on this show is dead inside. The ones that aren't leave. So,
I will.
But, any case, we have some news this week. There's some contract purchases, and then we'd actually like to talk a lot of baseball because, contrary to popular belief, this is still a baseball show, and this is supposed to be the most baseball-y time of year, I guess is the way to phrase it. There's playoffs that are literally 10 days away, so. That'd be pretty cool to talk about those. 2 seasons wrapping up in 10 days. It's probably newsworthy. At least in the past 5 years I've done it, that has been newsworthy. So,
yeah, I agree. I mean, talking baseball is what I'm here to do. Essentially, it's just we tend to get off topic because of who we are as people, but we'll try to do better. It's easier to do when there's playoff action going on. So I think I'm feeling good about
it. We should talk about news so that we can get to baseball. We're going to kick it off with Sioux City. This is a place that normally doesn't get talked about much, and it also angers the hell out of me that they are technically their legal name, the city of Sioux City. That angers me a lot, but there's just so much redundancy there. However, the Sioux City Explorers do not have a lease for next season. They are currently going to be up on their lease on April, I believe it was 27th of 2024, notably about 2 weeks before the season begins. The city is taking requests for proposals for all interesting parties. These RFPs are due by the 8th of September, and the town hopes to, or I suppose city hopes to have a decision made 30 days after that on the 8th of October. These proposals are going to be scored across 4 categories. It's going to equal a total score of 100. Scope is going to make up the vast majority. That's scored on a 0 to 50. Qualification content is 0 to 20. Community outreach is 0 to 20. And then geographical location is 0 to 10. Every proposal is going to get a score. And then I suppose the highest score is going to get priority on trying to make something happen in that regard. Obviously, if that highest proposal is not the Explorers, that's going to be a bit of a problem for both the American Association and the Explorers. I think that'd be a fair assessment to make there. And seeing how the Apollos went, I don't think that's a route they want to go down. However, that said, obviously they should have some sort of, angle in on this, even if they were beefing last year about seats and seating in the ballpark. So that is something to watch out for.
Yeah, and I think it's relevant because if you look at least the Ballpark Digest numbers, which I know you probably wouldn't because obviously there's some tension there.
I would love to look at them. I'm not allowed to. I'm banned from there.
At the bottom of the 46 partner league teams in attendance last season was the Jackals at 52,000. Less than 100 fans per game, or less than 100 fans total above them was Sioux City. And then it was 8,000 fans until you reach the next team. As for attendance per game, the Jackals had 1,022 last season. Sioux City had 1,109, so less than 100 more. And then you have to go almost another 100 up to Sioux Falls before you find another team. So Sioux City, I mean, I assume they'll probably, I'm trying to find their attendance numbers now. But I mean, they have not been a consistent attendance draw. So, yeah, man, I mean, there's, I could see some issues there. I wouldn't be surprised if this doesn't pan out, honestly.
I mean, yeah, they're clearly not much of a draw here. I also like how this is about to kind of sort of be a Jackals catching strays thing, because I do remember last year doing this Hinchcliffe move, which was about the same time. I kind of vaguely remember me and Will going, well, it can't get much worse attendance-wise, and oh, well, it can. But
Bubba.
If only we knew. Which their final attendance numbers are in for their Hinchcliffe year. They have 2 home games left, but they're both at Skylands because things. But back to Iowa quickly. Yeah, they're not doing great there. It's obviously an older ballpark as well. There hasn't been much of a consistent product on the field. It's been very, up and down. You have those organizations in indie ball that are, perennially contending, perennially putting out a quality product on the field. I think Quebec immediately in that. I think Kansas City for the most part when I think of that. I think Long Island certainly as well. So you have those kinds of teams. You obviously have others that, they may not always be putting out a good product, but they're doing something either with their ballpark or in-game experience, which then quite clearly drives people to the ballpark or they take advantage of it. It feels to me like Sioux City either that doesn't have that population anymore that particularly cares about baseball, or the team itself has allowed it to kind of get to the point where they're no longer a mainstay and a draw. Obviously, if they're opening up a bid proposal for the first time in, say, 30 years or so, that's probably not a good indication and probably says a lot about what the city feels about the team, whether that be their personal dealings with the team or what they believe that land and that stadium can be. Obviously, it means then they don't think that the Explorers are living up to their full potential, or at least the full potential of that region, of that particular piece of infrastructure. So that's obviously concerning. So yeah, I could see this going south in that regard. At the same point in time, though, there is something to be said about just continuing to do business with the person that you know, right? Like the devil is a bit better because at least there's some predictability there. You throw a little bit more in there. Maybe you go with a short-term lease, maybe say a 2 to 3 year lease as a, hey, this is a wake-up call to you, get it together kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I could see that being an option there. Plus, who knows what the future holds across the board, not just in the American Association, but in the other partner leagues as well. It very well could get a little turbulent in the future, I think would be fair to say. And if you have that in the back of your mind, it probably changes the discourse around that particular conversation, both with the team, what the league's going to try to have a say in there. And I also imagine with the government itself, that could be something that maybe works against them too, certainly. If the landscape seems very uncertain, do you want a volatile product in a publicly owned stadium? Or do you want something that's a bit more secured and figured out?
First, following up, their attendance this year is the worst in the league. Per game rate, it's by about 30 people per game, which isn't a huge deal, but that's Cleburne, but they're about 300 plus per game less than the next closest team in attendance. So that's a tough scene. Again, it's trusting the reported attendance numbers, but down at the bottom, you can usually trust it. And if anything else, it's an exaggeration, which is pretty wild. So there's that. The other thing, it just feels like issues in work and in life flare up. Like it is what it is. Like, whether it's friendships or it's business partnerships or it's, something like the town and the city, like it happens and people move on, but I am a believer in it can only happen so often. And they've had issues in the past and I'm not as well versed on those issues because I was covering the Atlantic at the time.
Yeah.
But now they're having issues again. And this is not a very long break since the last issue. So the more frequently it happens, the higher likelihood that this is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And I don't know, man. Like, this is a conversation we're not necessarily trying to get into today, but like just with the rumors swirling of relocation and shuffling of leagues between the indie leagues and new markets and different markets and all that stuff, I don't know that the American Association necessarily needs Sioux City. Like, that's the hard truth of it.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I see all these, like, how many people we interact with on Twitter? This is the kind of way I base it off of a lot of times. It's like, how many people, like, I got, like, loyal New Jersey Jackals fans in my DMs, despite the year they've got. Like, we know a couple of passionate Evansville fans and Gastonia fans and
even
all
Sussex.
this. Like, yeah, dude, like, I have never interacted, and maybe this will draw somebody out of the woodwork, and that's good. And because I like having connections with people, and that's part of indie ball. And especially in every market, but like I've never seen any sort of fan presence for Sioux City. Like even like their big tweets don't do much. Like it's a tough scene, man. Like
everything about them is, it's very bland, to be honest. I mean,
and under the radar. I mean, how much merch can they possibly move? I don't know, man. It's just so much about it is just like the ballpark itself. I've looked into a little bit, and it's not a big draw. Like like the ballpark itself, and this isn't about anybody in that organization. This isn't about anybody. I think it's just about the team and the resources and like the limitations you run into. I don't know. This has the feel of something that if it doesn't kill it this year, it's going to kill it next year or something like that. Like I really think it's more likely than not that this becomes a bigger issue moving forward. Which is a bold thing. I don't know enough about it, but just the feel is bad. I don't know if you got that too.
That's the thing too. Like I look at it and there's somewhere it's like, okay, this isn't great. Like I feel like a pretty good comparison here, and it's not a 1-for-1 because the city's a lot bigger and the players in it are a lot more impactful in their region, but it's probably the closest 1-for-1 would be kind of like when Winnipeg was doing their thing with the lease for Shaw Park. It's a bit different because Katz was a mayor of Winnipeg at one point. So there's a lot more built up, connection, a lot more built up, in the bank for people he's dealing with. He knows these people. He knows how the system works. He knows how to negotiate and all that goes along with it. But at the end of the day, I don't think anyone at any point really felt scared that Winnipeg was not going to work out. That Winnipeg always felt like, okay, it's going to be there. It'll be fine. Especially with the ballpark that they have. It was like, okay, the city's not going to let that sit dormant. It has to be a professional team. It's not going to make sense for summer ball there. And no other league's going to really want to go for it. So there's a lot that goes towards that. With Sioux City, attendance isn't great. Geography-wise, like, yeah, it's nice where it is because you're kind of close to Lincoln. You're right there with Sioux Falls. You're not that far from, say, Kansas City. It's definitely the place you can kind of stop on your way to on your way back. If you're one of those Chicago cluster teams, like geographically, it's fine, but it's not indispensable. And it certainly fits in, especially with that ballpark, for, maybe some nicer summer college leagues, right? Like a prospects league. Mm-hmm. It's not a crazy thing to say, hey, it fits there. Maybe that's for the best for everyone, especially if that market doesn't particularly care. It's obviously upsetting because that's one of the original markets. It's one of the oldest teams around. So to lose them would be, from a historic standpoint, from a nerd standpoint, as are most of the people listening to this and both people here, it's sad from that perspective. And obviously from the fact of, regardless of whether or not a form of baseball stays there or not, if it's any sort of a downgrade to a, either semi-pro or just straight up amateur level, then there's going to be people losing jobs. Like there isn't a scenario where that doesn't happen. And that's obviously upsetting for anyone that wants to work in the sport industry, and obviously upsetting for anyone that's losing their job. You don't want to lose your job. So that part is upsetting here. But from just an on paper perspective, it feels like the Explorers have kind of served their purpose. And yeah, 30 years is a long time to build something up for. But at a certain point, you have to start saying, have they outlived their usefulness? And it feels like we're getting closer to that point.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I don't know. I especially when it comes to markets that I'm not in as much, and it's hard to get a feel for it. I look at a lot of weird things I've kind of picked up on over time that can be an indicator of things. It doesn't mean it is a fact. It's just little things that point to like what's the vibe going on. One is I watch the games. I watch a number of Sioux City games. They're in the race this year. The vibe is always quiet. It's a lot of empty seats. Beyond that, it's weird things. Like, okay, I looked up the ballpark. This is a dumb one, but it's something that I have tracked before, and it's just interesting to see. It's of note. Little things like, if you look up their ballpark, it's 4.5 stars and has 6 reviews.
Okay.
If you look up Wild Health Field in Lexington, it has 1,100 reviews plus. Okay, it's a bigger market, no problem. Gastonia is a ballpark that's been open for like 3 years in a town that's exactly the same size, and they have 360 reviews. Yeah, it's a dumb thing to point to. I'm leading with that. But
Yeah.
in all the times people have gone, only 6 people really felt enough of an urge to say something. Like,
I mean,
it's weird stuff like that. Like, it's not getting even a negative reaction. It's just kind of.
It's just there. It doesn't inspire engagement's the point.
Yeah. And like, I always subscribe to like the local like news stuff in all these markets just to get little scoops on stuff and just to get the feel. And bro, Sioux City like doesn't pop on like even like Google notifications outside of the stuff they post. It's not, again, I know this ain't it. This is just from somebody who isn't, there frequently enough to talk about it. But I would say I've seen a lot of this at this point between indie teams and their market and their city. And this does have the feel of like bad vibes for sure. And I guess you're kind of feeling the same thing at this point. Am I right?
Yeah, I'm kind of there too. And also I did did the same thing you just did. And I looked up Yogi Berra, which I think is about the same age. It was built late 90s. I'm not sure population-wise, there's probably more people in the greater, Montclair area than there is in Sioux City. I don't know what the population difference would be, but in any event, 4.5 stars on 473 ratings, and apparently I rated them at one point. I don't remember doing that. I gave them 4 stars, which, honestly, that's probably too high for them, but whatever there. Any case, though, yeah, I'm kind of on the similar level there, too. I just don't know what the draw is. And plus, just from a business perspective, I wonder what the economic driver looks like around there. Like, what's that economy looking like? Because I imagine it says city in there. I got to imagine it's still fairly agrarian. And if that's the case, then is that popping off right now? Or is that not doing so hot? Because if it's not doing so hot, then that could be a problem too.
It is. I don't know. The stadium itself is kind of in like an entertainment district of sorts, but that just means it has like a little go-kart track,
that doesn't mean anything.
Center, an ice center, bowling lanes.
Oh, so it has more competition around it.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
I mean, that's what
look.
These are all family activities that are drawing away from the ballpark, especially if it's a hot night. It's like, hey, like this indoor thing we could do instead.
Yeah, I mean, what's always struck me is like the bulk. If you were to zoom out like on the satellite image and like catch kind of like the northern end of the city, the southern end of the city, the bulk of what you're looking at is still fields. It's fine. Like, I'm still a believer. Like, I mean, there's pioneer teams that draw well, so it doesn't mean anything. It's just that.
Yeah.
Okay. We just want to wrap it into a conversation we've had before.
Yeah.
It's an agricultural city, for the most part. It is people who are working hard for money, and it's people who value the dollar. And if they are going to let a dollar leave their wallet that could otherwise go to their family, whether it's the vacation, it's the food on the table, it's the clothes on the backs, whatever, you got to earn it. That's just the way it is. Yeah. And like, maybe they didn't always have to, Sioux City being like 30 years old, they came up in the good days of like Indian minor baseball. Like, but again, just from what I see, the Google notifications I get of like everything with them, which also usually pumps the marketing of teams into my inbox just so I can get a feel. I don't know that they are generating the value unless you're one of their like loyal fans. I don't know that they're doing what it takes to bring people back and become a must-see item in a city, which is a shame because I honestly do think in a town like Sioux City, if the Explorers were really delivering a hell of a product, they probably could become like a must-do thing. Like Friday night, they wouldn't be reporting. What was it? Their Thursday attendance was 818. Seems like they popped to about 2,000 tonight, at least in the reported attendance. Who knows? But like, that's a good thing. I think it's their last series of the year, which is going to push it too. But those could be more consistent numbers, and that would double their normal attendance. And that's there. But I do wonder if that's kind of what a lot of this is coming from. It's a tough ballpark, by the way. It's only about 1/3, 1/4 surrounded by stands.
And then the outfield's kind of weird with a mixture of berms and stuff. Yeah. Which I'm looking up the population of Sioux City. It's about 85,000.
Exactly the same as Gastonia, man. Crazy.
Yeah, and like honestly, it fits kind of like right in line there with like Wayne Montclair population. Montclair's about 40,000, and then Wayne's about 50,000. So
Yeah.
The Jackal area is actually kind of a decent comparison. In any case, let's switch over to another American Association team that may have a bit of an issue with scheduling. And that would be the Milwaukee Milkmen, because as pointed out on Twitter, the American Association playoff schedule was released, and round 1's supposed to happen 6 through 9. The issue is 8 and 9 at Franklin Field, the home of the Milkmen. The Savannah Bananas are playing games. I believe there's 3 of them. There's a doubleheader on the Sunday where the game would be being played, and then 1 game on the 8th. So, and the Milkmen are supposed to play the Bananas for all this. As part of the World Tour thing, it's the home ballpark, provides the other team. Now, that part I don't think is really hard to solve. That probably is just renegotiate part of the contract, take a slightly lesser cut to cover the expense of bringing, say, the party animals in, the other team that normally plays. That's easy to solve. I mean, hell, you can even just, throw together whatever team you want to go play them. Realistically, it's like the Harlem Globetrotters. We don't care about the game. We care about the entertainment. So that's the easy problem to solve. The bigger problem is hosting a playoff game at the same time or the same day as the Banana exhibition here. And I don't think it's a stretch to say the Bananas are draw here. I don't think that's... But when you have a playoff game for league integrity, that has to take precedence. But if you're the owner of the ballpark, finance is the thing that takes precedence there. So I'm curious to see how this is going to get handled. I've seen thrown around that maybe we move where the playoff game is. Maybe we move it to Lake Country. But the issue that becomes there is, what if Lake Country has to play a game? What if that's a thing? I also saw that there's another conflict down the line, but that's only if they get to the actual league championship series. So, but the general overall problem is they're kind of double booked at the moment, barring, Milwaukee just falling out of the sky in the next 10 days.
All right. Yeah, I have so many thoughts here, and I'm going to try to, again, keep us on baseball, so I'm not going to try to dive too deeply necessarily. Well, hold on, because Milwaukee has won. Milwaukee is in the playoffs, so they have a problem to solve. Marking them as in on
assume that there is the condition, of course, assuming that they don't absolutely bottom out. That is the thing. If they bottom out, they may not be hosting.
True, but still they have to be playing. Of course, it does solve the home away issue.
Because
my other thing is okay, play at Lake Country, cool. Every baseball fan in the area is going to the Bananas. It's still a huge problem. And look, it's not the end of the day. It's not the end of the world. I mean, they've got you hate it because you're shooting yourself in the foot, putting a game in a different park, probably paying some sort of rental to them for that.
Yeah,
just to get no one to show. This is a bad scenario. You have to assume they ran it by the league. You can't just drop stuff in your schedule like this. Though I will say, I feel like
this was scheduled months ago.
I feel like Lexington might have done that when they put in that college tournament last year and then shuffled things around. All of a sudden, Genomes and Legends didn't have a game for a week in the middle of their season. I feel like that wasn't fully communicated, but the Atlantic's a different communication situation. I think the Americans are a little more on top of it. I don't know, man. How do you think this went down? What a choice. And I get it. It's hard to turn down the money. If that's the date they're giving you, that's the date they're giving you. You have to figure it out. But I mean, dude,
that's the thing I figure.
Crazy.
I feel like it was basically that. Hey, we can fit you in these possible dates. And they said, oh, there's a weekend there. We'll take that. And it was as simple as that. I mean, the Bananas are such a draw that it's hard to say no to that and to get your cut on that, especially, again, if you're in the business of just whatever's going to make the most we put in there, then it makes sense. And also keeping in mind that whole area has been getting built up. There's a Topgolf there. They just hosted an all-star game. There's a lot going for that Franklin region there. So obviously the goal is to be an entertainment hub, and the Bananas are entertainment there. So I think that's the bulk of it. I can't imagine the league's thrilled about this. There's no scenario which comes away, with a sterling result here. Looking just, at the actual playoff dates real quick, I mean, 6 through 9 is technically the division series. I suppose, much of the chagrin I got to imagine of Anthony Barone and the players would be if you played on the 6th at home and then did the last 2 on the road. Essentially, you forfeit your home field advantage kind of thing. I mean, like, you could, in theory, do that. You know, or... You know, that seems to be one possible solution there, because then at least you play those last 2 on the road and you're not fighting the bananas for your audience. But that doesn't seem like a really great and optimal scenario. I mean, I hate to say that you could go just play 6, 7, and then if need be, you play on 10. That is an option there. And then force a really shitty travel situation so that way they'd be ready to go on 11.
I'm just thinking that through. Yeah, I mean, I guess, oh, man. Like, I'm also preoccupied by thinking about how the league must feel about this. It's weird they said it was cool to do. I get it. Like, it's, you know, a quick way to make owners mad if you're, like, turning down a big payday, like the bananas coming in.
Yeah.
The more I hear about Jesse Cole, the more I do think he's the kind of guy who would pick Milwaukee, and then Milwaukee's like, oh, wait, that's our playoffs. Can we find another date? And he'd be like, deuces, don't care. Started bursting on his bubble on Jesse Cole. But
yeah.
What a bit. I don't know. Because I'm trying to think of it in so many ways. I'm trying to, like, again, I was in baseball ops last year, and I'm like, dude, what's the locker room like here in that?
Oh,
what's the clubhouse vibe? I'm like, oh, you scheduled something for the playoffs? Like, oh, okay, F me then. Like, and so you thought we weren't going to make it, or either we weren't going to make it and you were going to pay us to hang around and play the bananas, or we were going to make it and during / pre-playoffs you were going to have us play the bananas. Like, that's my thing. I don't understand the angle. Like, because it's like, oh, the conflict that we thought could have happened. I'm thinking of it from the other side, like, okay, if they didn't make it, are you keeping these dudes in town to play the bananas after they lose out of the season? What?
What's that game check like then? Because as a player, I kind of would expect a little bit more.
Right? The bananas make at least, I think it sits about $150 a night. I'd better be seeing that if I'm on the team.
Exactly, because now you're throwing everything in the flux too. I mean, for a lot of guys, especially like if you look at that Milwaukee roster, there's guys there that could absolutely go get an Atlantic League job. Sure,
and also, I mean, you saw what's his face, NBA Finals, dude. Oh shoot, I'm so bad with the NBA. Who's that kid in the Nuggets, the foreign dude?
Oh, Jokic?
Damn. Yeah, you saw him at the end of it. Like, yeah. When they won, he was like, they told him about the parade in the press conference. He was like, when's that? And they're like, 3 days. And I was like, I just want to go home. Like, if you aren't going somewhere, bro, you want to go home. Like, whether it's you just want to see your family, or like you want to start your off-season job, or you want to start your off-season training, bro, you're telling me you got to hang around and play banana ball for your payday? Bruh, get out of here on that. Like, honestly, the more I think about it, I started in my head as like, like that sucks. Like, one of those gambles. You're like, well, it might be a conflict, it might not, but it's a big payday. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, bro, what were you thinking? Like, what was the play here? Like, you got to come back to them. You should not have made that open as an available date. Like, that's on you. It bothers me more as I think about it more, because it's like disrespectful to players. And like, in my opinion, look, the players might not care. That's a fair point. But like, bro, if I was a player, I'd care. I wouldn't be happy.
Yeah, especially if
you're maybe you're hyped. Maybe you're hyped to play. That's a big stage. More people don't watch that game. They're going to watch any other game.
Yeah, but how much of that is going to be like actual, worthwhile scouting that you're going to get out of that?
Oh, it won't be any.
Sure. So then what's the matter if there's
scouts hate the bananas?
Yeah. Exactly. So then what difference does it make if there's more eyes or not?
Yeah, what's his face? Reese, shoot, I'm the worst.
Hampton
chose not to play for Gastonia this year, went there,
put up numbers. He's their best player, but like homies,
Yeah.
I mean, ain't nobody watching. Dude, they're getting 18,000 people watching the live stream tonight, though. Like, it's a damn good view. Like, that's pretty good. Playing Des Moines. It's crazy.
Oh, God. But yeah, like that whole situation is just so awkward now. And like, the more I think about it too, like if you have a winter league job, that's
I ain't hanging around for this.
Yeah.
Blackball me.
That, or it's like, you're going to risk injuring yourself during banana ball for this?
No, dude. Absolutely not.
Especially if you got to start getting together. Like, if you got to work on getting your visa work together, like, that's a major problem. Actually, for the dudes that got visas, I mean, like, how's that work out? That visa's still good.
Look, I haven't run into... Because I talked to a bunch of guys who have played against Bananas. So here's a great time. I hear it's really fun. Everybody seems to enjoy it. I haven't run into anybody of the opinion of, like, about the injury concern, I guess, for lack of a better term. But, like, people have that feel, especially postseason, like mid-season, whatever, get your work in. You're already playing ball. But, like, you're tacking days on. Like, just from my perspective, like, playing rugby before, like, probably the worst injury I got was in a game that was a blowout that I fought to get back into. And like, then just fully, like, Paul George my ankle. Like, I was like, I'm sorry, like, after that, like, if I don't need to be in the game, I was the first dude on the wing to be like, yo, we're up 30. Like, tap myself in the head. Like, I'm good. Like, I don't need to be here for this anymore. Like, switching a B-side kid. Like, what are we doing? So, yeah, I don't know, man. Especially, like, you're trying to make it somewhere maybe, like, I don't know. The more I think about it, the more bothered I am. So I'm going to let it ride. But, yeah, I guess to summarize my thoughts, it was short-sighted. It was a short-sighted decision with blinders on, not thinking about the way it affects others, not thinking about the way it affects anything with the bottom line, which you have a right to do as a business owner, but I think it should be noted by the players.
Fair. Do you think there's any sort of a solution out of this? Like, is it just move the game and hope for the best, or move the dates around?
I strongly suspect they'll do. I would look for an announcement in the next couple of days, probably doing the party animals. I can shoot a text to a couple of party animals guys. I bet they're already on the lookout. And I mean, they're only playing like Friday, Saturday, Sundays for the most part. Yeah. So like, it's not, it's not crazy. It's not like, oh my God, like that's my day off. Like, so they're flexible, but it just does not feel spectacular, man. It's very odd. So yeah, it's probably gonna be the party animals. So that solves that. Ballpark question's still in play. I mean, unless they tried to double it up, but that Saturday's a mess. So as you said, I mean, maybe they try to do 8th and 10th around it. But what are you doing? A Friday day playoff game? That sucks, but all right, sure, do it.
Yeah. And
they got to clear out for the bananas to come. Like that also, every option sucks. I don't know. They'll probably, it was already mentioned they might play in Lake Country. I bet they do it and whatever.
Honestly,
ballpark.
Would it be crazy to think they play in Kokomo?
I want to say something stupid. Where the hell's Kokomo?
Indiana. The reason why I say Kokomo is I remember when that team was founded, and for like the first week or so, the ballpark was not ready. So they played out of the same facility as the Kokomo summer team did. So I wonder if that's a thing. And I don't know why, but I feel like I remember there being, I think there's a connection between the ownership group from Milwaukee and the ownership group for that Kokomo team or ballpark. I feel like there was something there, and that's why it was Kokomo. So, if there is that there, maybe that makes more sense. You solve the problem of the baseball fans kind of going all over the place and now going...
Michael Zimmerman owns both. You're right. There's your solution.
Yeah. Put them in Kokomo.
Yep. Wow.
Damn.
Good call by you.
Hey, I should start writing articles.
Hey, man. We took way too long on this. Sorry to everybody trying to hear baseball talk.
Hey, the good news is we only have one other thing left to get to before we get to baseball talk. So let's just knock that out of the way so that way we can actually get into baseball talk. Pioneer League's partnered with Baseball Cloud. It's data tracking analytics. We covered this when they did the thing with the Frontier League. Speaking of which, they work with the Frontier League. whatever they're doing for them, expect them to do for the Pioneer League. It's going to help with the camps and shit like that. So, yeah, congratulations. They have some data advanced to them. They could find out how hard they hit a ball and how many times the baseball spins. Congrats.
I mean, I think it's good. I do think that Hawkeye is trash, and the current system TrackMan is trash. So it's just not designed for what they're using it for. The thing is that Baseball Cloud, though, they are at least built for baseball tracking, which is a huge deal. We've seen the success of similar things that are specifically designed to track baseballs and the movement of baseballs and players and all that. My two gripes in the past have been there was a lot of talk previously with things that they were possibly going to do that there was no follow through on. That not necessarily it's not necessarily their fault, but it's just like we'll see. And two is like, all right, like yeah, you do data for these leagues. Where is it? Like they post the fastest velo and the hardest hit ball every week, but like, I mean, I don't know. Like we're not entitled to the data of anybody, for the record. However, if I'm a player, the more people that can see my data, the happier I am. So I don't know. I feel like there should be a good accessible center place for us to be able to view a lot of this data. Because I have seen Baseball Cloud data, by the way. They were doing it for Lexington when I was there. It was good for the most part. A lot of it was good. And I think they were in the right direction. I assume they've also improved a little bit since. It's just that I'm in favor of who can make that data somewhat public, at least, because I think it's good. It's the future of sports. It's the future of these leagues. And the sooner you can show that you are understanding of the future and moving that direction, I think the better it will be.
All right. But, yes, that's about all there is for Baseball Club. Let's get to the contract purchases so that way we can actually talk ball. How about that?
Yep.
All right. Contract purchases. 22nd, Yoshi Tsugo. He gets his contract.
Yeah, man, you got it.
I know. See, that's the benefit of writing phonetically. Was a former Staten Island Ferry Hawk for all of 12 games. Gets picked up by the Giants. He's now in AA Richmond in those 12 games. He hit.
Dude was a menace.
He was. He hit 359, 479, 949, 7
How
home
many
runs.
bombs?
Yeah, 7 bombs, 13 home runs, 9 walks, no stolen bases. 12 games.
Dude was gross. They better keep that guy under contract. Look, I know a lot of first timers in Staten Island. Keep that contract live. Like, do what you got to do, because if he does not stick an affiliate ball wherever, Japan, wherever he ends up going, dude, try to keep him, because he was on a different planet. Yeah.
Yeah.
They need to. They cannot let him go to any other Atlantic League team.
I think he got put on the inactive list, if I'm not mistaken.
Excellent. That'll play. Good call. Rumor, by the way, that the Atlantic League might switch up roster rules and possibly have it. So if you were under their contract, currently you cannot sign with another Atlantic League team until your contract is finished with that team you signed with. But there's rumors they might try to expand that to any team. Which is wild and would be bad. So keep an eye on that. We're not letting the Atlantic League slide on their stupid roster crap after what they did to Tillman Pugh earlier this year. Yeah. So we're going to keep an eye on that.
Other contract, this one just came through today. Tyler J. from Joliet goes to the Mets. Does not have a landing spot yet. My guess will probably either be Brooklyn or AA Binghamton would be my guess. 4-3 record with a 4.26 ERA in 57 innings. He struck out 64 guys, walked only 19. So I have to imagine the strikeout and walk number is the reason why he got taken there. Age-wise, I don't think he's that young though. So
he's 29. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So it got to be AA.
He was gross last season too.
Yeah.
So this isn't out of the blue.
So it got to be like a AA thing, and maybe this is just an innings deal, but hey, either way.
Yeah, I mean, AA, he did do okay. He had a sub-3 ERA in his high A ball experience for what? How long was he there? I always forget. Like 94 innings, that's whatever, 35 games. AA, he did struggle. He was there for longer. Could not get the ERA below 4. But look, man, an ERA below 4 in AA, and then you come back to a 29-year-old, you're not fully out of place there. If he had 7.7 strikeouts per 9 at the time. No, he didn't. He had 7.9. If he can bring that up towards like a 9, he's got a shot to keep moving. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not well versed on his stuff, but the number one lesson is if you're a guy on the bump trying to get picked up, I hate to say it because nobody wants to hear it. Strikeouts, man. Strikeouts sell right now. So you're going to want to work on getting them punchies.
Terrible. It's the sad part is it runs contrary to what helps your team. So like, if you're just going for strikeouts, it'll help you get picked up. But at the same point in time, you have to get enough of them to where it won't cost you a job.
How do you figure?
Because if you're allowing a lot of runs, odds are any ball guy ain't going to keep you.
I understand. If you're allowing runs, yeah.
Yeah, that's the point. So if you're just going for strikeouts, though, you're going to either be walking a shit ton of guys or you're going to wind up throwing a mistake pitch every once in a while. So on the velo.
I was also thinking along the lines of you're not going to go as deep in games, but if you're not, he's not relying on he's had starts this year where that's not his bread and butter. So, I mean, yeah, I think that's the number one thing. When you're not pitching to contact enough so you can get those Ks, that can be a mess. But like, if you look at his numbers last year where he was strictly relief role, it was just about the same number of Ks, a third of the walks. I mean, he was gross last season too. I'm surprised he actually didn't get at least a look, which maybe he did, but
it gotta be an age thing.
I know, but I think 29, I'm a believer in age just a number at this point where if you can be nasty, they don't care how old you are. You can be 57. It does not matter.
See, like on one hand, I kind of see that, but like at the same point in time, I think the older you are, the more polished you have to be, right? Like you can't be reinventing yourself at that point.
You're right, but I mean, now he has been delivering this for about 2 years. So yeah, I don't know. I think I'm not as down on the signing. A 29-year-old pitcher getting signed, I can typically be like, oh, he's just holding a spot this late in the year. He's just holding a spot. But like, I think he has an opportunity where if he can deliver 8 or 9 strikeouts per 9 innings, I think there's a chance that at least he gets somebody back to camp and has a shot next year to like stick in the organization.
Honestly, I think like the biggest thing here is A, knowing where he's getting assigned to right now, and B, is there a prospect on that team that the Mets want to see more out of?
Yeah, true. I also think it's worth noting that Tyler, like, this is so stupid. He was a number 6 overall pick, by the way.
Really?
Like, that means he has been someone that has shown before that he can do this thing. Like, yeah.
It makes me kind of think the Mets are saying, you know what, let's roll the dice on a dude that, you know, at one point was really well thought of. Can we rehab him? He's shown a little bit here. He's worth a gamble. And at worst, he's an innings eater that helps, you know, kind of, which, you know, it honestly makes me think more and more he's here because there's a prospect on a team the Mets want more out of. And they're like, get the guy that was high picked. Maybe we could get something out of him in the room and, you know, eat innings.
Yeah. I'm also looking, I feel like he's a Tommy John guy.
He very well could be.
I don't know for sure, but he was out 2020, 2021, and jumped in mid-2022, it looks like.
That sounds Tommy Johnny.
Yeah, don't it? Fair. I'm just doing a quick scroll through. I have my full spreadsheet of Tommy John guys. Because I am well-adjusted. No, I don't know. I don't have him as having it. But it does look like it. Something came up, man. So let's just say he was out of the game for a couple years there. And
well, I could tell you this much.
Feels more optimistic.
In 2017, he had thoracic outlets in a surgery.
There we go, and that's why he's on my other list. Found them.
You have a thoracic outlet list.
I have a lot of lists. Okay, don't worry about it.
Well, what's thoracic outlet list? Just like Tyler J and Matt Harvey. Actually,
no, it's related. There's an overlap in the surgeries there with something else. So it started being tracked for a minute, but then it no longer was as relevant. But he's actually not on that, but he is on the like injury list, which has like question marks, and then it just says neck next to it. So that makes more sense. God. Okay. It's all coming together now. Anyway, this would not be content, so feel free to cut all of it. But to the point. I guess just to summarize, I like Tyler J.
Oh. All right. Well, that's all she wrote there. I suppose we can actually get to meaningful baseball talk now. An hour into the show. That may be a good decision. Yeah. So our series of the week this week, Lake Country versus the Fargo-Moorhead Redhawks. Both teams fighting for a playoff spot. Series is the 29th through the 31st, so early week series for these teams as we get into the last week of the American Association season. They've met once so far this year. Fargo took that series 2-1. It was played at Lake Country and Owomack, and Fargo was +3 on the runs there, so for what that's worth. At the time we started doing these notes, and at the time we started recording tonight, they had an identical record of 43 and 47. That is no longer the case as Fargo won, beat the hell out of the Explorers, and Lake Country's losing streak goes to 7 games now there. This is what we call a must-win series. In the case of the dog counts, though, they do get a little bit of reprieve as King County won tonight in extras, beating Kleber, and so that will keep them at square in their divisional hunt. The Salt Dogs are not looking good, though. They lost tonight, so their playoff spot's a little bit more in jeopardy now. So overall, though, these are still two teams that are very much fighting for playoff position, even if it is in two separate divisions. Lake Country's probably the better, well, not probably, they are the better batting team here, but they're also the worst pitching team here. So we're dealing with one team that's a little more opportunistic, a little bit more feast or famine, versus a team that's, they're like a 2002 Toyota Camry. They're not particularly impressive. They're not particularly terrible. You kind of want a little bit more out of it, but at the end of the day, you're also like, hey, it's a 20-year-old Camry. What are we really expecting here?
Bro, I don't even know what to do with what you just said. First of all, the Camry shade. Oh, wow.
So we now determined that your truck is not a Tacoma.
Was that describing Fargo?
Huh?
Was that describing Fargo?
Yeah.
Okay. Because, it also felt a little bit like the team that lost 7 in a row. So that's why I was like, well, hold on. This could go a couple directions here.
See, the thing is, I feel like Lake Country's more of like an old sob. Where it's like, there's moments where it's like, oh, this is really impressive. But then there's also moments where you lose 8 games in a row. And you're like, oh, why do I still own this car that we can't even find parts for anymore?
Do you own a Saab by chance?
I do not know.
I will say, and the reason I'm a little distracted currently is I'm digging deep trying to find what the rotation looks like coming up. And what a mess this thing is.
Here's the thing. I don't think it really is going to matter because I don't think
there's a single... They're just doing whatever the hell.
It doesn't really matter. Here's the thing. Fargo has not been very impressive here. The bullpen's not lived up to what they need it to be this year. I mean, it's really Alieza, and that's about it. But pitching-wise, they're still a better team on just about any given day than what you're going to get out of Lake Country. I mean, they've allowed what? They allow a lot of runs written in the notes.
That's fair.
With a 5.34 ERA. I think that was second worst behind Sioux Falls, I want to say. So if that's the note in there, I think that tells you what you need to know. And I mean, 10 runs against tonight, 5 runs last game, 5 runs the game before that, 10 the game before that. I mean, pitching wise here, I don't think we really need to dig that deep. This isn't a case where, the last time we previewed something from the association where it was Fargo versus Lincoln, where it's like, okay, the pitching match is actually going to matter here. This is not it's going to matter here. This is going to come down to, are the bats for Lake Country going to keep doing as they've done? Are they going to keep hitting the second most home runs in the league against a pretty middle-of-the-road pitching staff that's like Kevin McGovern, occasionally Tyler Grauer, and a couple other dudes? Are they going to be able to shut down that offense? That's the question we're here at. I will give this much, though, to Lake Country. They do have a couple of good bullpen guys, like Torres and Mullenbach look to be pretty solid guys. And also Portorello's Portorreal is pretty solid. Richardson looks to be decent, but I mean, outside of that, it's like, okay, well, now we're getting into a little bit more of a situation here, especially with, oh my God, okay, with the starting pitcher, we're really getting into a situation. It's like Augie Volton and off the map.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at too.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was looking at. I mean, what I'm looking at too is Fargo's, if you look at like runs per game, they're fourth lowest in the league right now. But if you look at like actually what's been going on, remember they went through the big downswing midseason, and they were having like 3 games at a time. Like they would do like 3 games of scoring like 8 runs total. And then they would have a game where they would score like 6 or 9, and then another one they score 10, and then they'd have another 3 games scoring like 8 runs. And that was really what was screwing them, because like if you have a week where you have 6 games and 2 of them you put up like 7 runs plus, and the others you put up 4 or less, then you're probably going to come out of the week only winning about 2 games. And that's what they're running into. Lately, though, the lineup's been a lot more consistent. Like they've been hitting the way they kind of would expect, just getting guys on base and finding ways to get them home. Like even then, they were still getting some hits, but it was like the lineup consistency wasn't there to keep driving in the runs. And right now, I think they're just kind of feeling it. They have been putting up runs more consistently. They do have the games where Fargo will like only put up like a 1 or 2 spot. Like they put up 13, but then they put up 6, 9, 4, and 3, and then 7 and 1. But then before that was like 9 and 5 again. Like they'll have an unimpressive performance mixed in with 2 good ones. So even if they sort of come out flat and 1 against Lake Country, I don't see it happening more than once. I think Lake Country kind of needs that at this point with the current pitching staff they have working. Yeah, man, I like Fargo to probably take 2 out of 3 here. Home after a long road trip, by the way. Haven't been home since the 17th. They'll be playing game 1 of this thing on the 29th. So about 2 weeks on the road. I think they'll be looking to get after it, looking to finish the job and get themselves a playoff spot. I don't think they want to drag it out playing Winnipeg.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I guess that is a fairly decent point. I mean, Sioux is not a great road trip there. Yeah, I definitely see it. I think Fargo is the better overall team. I think they're playing better as of right now. I mean, they obviously are. They haven't had a week-long losing streak yet. And while, yeah, they're pretty, unimpressive, and I don't think they're really a playoff mainstay this year. I think they're kind of, one and doneer. They do seem to be better than Lake Country is. The thing that gets me, though, is this is the Lake Country team that I think really needs this series. Because, you assume this
Milwaukee. Fargo needs the series, too, though. It's the second to last series right now.
Fair, but, they also have 4 games against Winnipeg at the end of the year. And currently they have a Lincoln team that is, like a Lincoln right now. They're not really posing much of a threat here. And if I'm right, Lincoln doesn't exactly have an easy end of the year. I think their last series is against a solid team or a desperate team. Yeah, Lincoln ends the year. They have Sioux Falls for 2 more. 3 at home against Cleburne. And then 4 on the road against King County. So those aren't exactly easy games. Cleburne's going to fight like hell because they're in the same boat. And arguably, the series we should be previewing is Lincoln and Cleburne, arguably. But
honestly, yeah, kind of crazy that Cleburne's still fighting. It's impressive.
Yeah, it is. Logan Watkins doing
the
a
winning
job.
games they have to win, which is, hey, that's what you got to do, man. Hell.
Yeah. But yeah, honestly, I'm looking at them if you come out of this going into September, those last 4 games, and all things considered equal, who do you like to win a series of 4 games or more? Fargo over Winnipeg or Lincoln over King County? Right? Fargo's,
Yeah, it depends on who's playing for too, but you're right. But also, this is weird, managers and fans and front office might think this way. Players, I just don't think players think that they look at the game ahead of them for the most part. You win a game ahead of you.
Yeah.
And I do think Fargo, Lake Country's lost 8 in a row now.
That builds up.
This is the worst they've looked. And the games haven't been particularly pretty. It's got punked by Chicago for 4 straight. 5-2. They were the closest that was a 2-run game. Everything else was 3 or 4 runs. After that, they got blitzed by Milwaukee, which happens. It's a good team. But, yeah. This is the worst I've seen Lake Country. It just has been very... They have not... It's not damn, it's just a series of bad breaks. They have lost these games.
Fair. Like, that is just knowing that there really isn't a reprieve waiting for you. Like, they end the year at Kansas City. This is a must-win type of situation if you are Lake Country. Like, this is your series. Even if KC is kind of like, okay, we have everything wrapped up, let's pull off here for the last, couple of 3 games. You're still probably not winning that series if you're Lake Country. So, that's the only thing that keeps me from saying Fargo in a runaway.
My counter on all of this, and again, I hate to obsess with the current streak, but that's what we've got. I mean, we can look at the form that the teams are in. I mean, Lake Country, of the last 10 games, is allowing 6 runs per game. Fargo's allowing 4.5. I mean, how many is Fargo scoring over these? They're scoring about 5 runs per game, while Lake Country is only scoring about 3.5. I mean, we can only look at the teams that are in front of us. I just don't see Lake Country being able to get it done against Fargo. Again, maybe once, but I don't see them doing it twice. And especially a Fargo team that's used, they have played big games for this league. They have an understanding of, handling business with their back against the wall. They have the playoff experience. I just, on multiple levels, I like Fargo.
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, I'm going to pick the Doghounds to win this series. I'm not. I'm still taking Fargo. Don't get me wrong here. I'm just trying to point out that if we're looking at teams that have more to play for and have, that second chance waiting, Lake Country does not have a second chance. This is it. This is the end of the line for them. So, there's that. I don't think you made any sort of point that I can really refute. That's just, yeah. So, I'm just trying to more or less play devil's advocate here. But yeah, overall in this series, it looks like Fargo. Yeah. It definitely looks like Fargo.
I mean, yeah. And look, Kevin McGovern still got 3-2 ERA. Let's not.
Yeah.
Let's not get it twisted. The guy delivers.
Yeah.
But again, I'll of course tell you, I get where you're coming from here, but I like the Lake Country team too. It's a team I was really happy with after they made the manager move. They responded well. They had momentum. I just think, the vibes were good. I just don't know that they can get them much further. Boy, is Fargo's starting pitching sketchy though.
Yeah.
Every time I look at them, really? Is that what we're doing? All right.
The problem is they were injury riddled for a while and the bullpen didn't pick up. And so now you got guys like Tyler Grauer, who looked really good last year, that are more maybe he's not that guy. Maybe we got a little ahead of ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, let's not pretend that Lake Country's got much more going on. They have one guy with a sub-4. Yeah. But, I mean, what we're describing as 2 teams are 4th and 5th place in their respective divisions. In the American Association, that's just what it's going to look like every time. So there's no great revelation within this, but, head to head, I just think Fargo is rolling. I think. Yeah. I would just say too. I mean, there have been a couple blow up outings recently for Lake Country that's going to twist sort of the results on things. That was a Mike Shawarin outing, which was just a criminal the other night. That was a tough scene. That flipped kind of the whole team's numbers. He's had back-to-back brutal outings, but it's also something that's not great because they've been counting on him. So, yeah. I feel like with Lake Country, it's a team. Okay, got it. It feels like a team where the wheels are finally falling off, and Fargo's a team where things are finally coming together. And yeah, that's it. End of thought.
The charts are now overlaid, and we're at the point where the arrows cross.
Yes. Yeah. Very well said.
Yeah.
And plus, I can't really bet against the guy last name Woodcock. Just it's a principal thing.
Fair. I will say this much, though. I think, and if this is the end of the line, and I guess next week, once we pretty much have a pretty good idea of what the playoffs are going to look like, I think we could probably call it, on September 1, what the deal's going to be here. Maybe there's a couple little details left to iron out here, but by and large, we'll be able to kind of go through and look at teams that aren't going to the postseason this is it for them. Mm-hmm. So maybe we go in a little bit deeper then, but I will say I think Lake Country learned a lot from this year, and I think they have at the very least, they have their staff going forward. They know these are the guys that can kind of lead them here, because there has been a noticeable bump since that first 10-game stretch of the year. It's gotten
I
better.
agree completely. Yeah, this has been great to see from Lake Country. I'm a Lake Country fan, honestly. Like, I don't always have a rooting interest for things, but I like that team, contrary to what it would sound like here.
Yeah.
A part of what I'm also saying is I watch a lot of Lake Country games, and this season, I think we're done. I think we're done here. But I think I'm very optimistic about what their future looks like.
Yeah, like, honestly, it was a very good year, too. The thing is, they're kind of like on almost on a Fairy Hawks track, right? Where it's like, we see the improvement. Fair. You see where it's going, and it's on a positive trend. They may have taken a little bit of time to get there, but it's going in the right direction. And in a year, maybe two, probably a year, bigger playoff over in the American Association. In a year, maybe two from now, this is going to be a good team. But it's going to take some time to get there. And also, we got to see how this current staff builds a roster. That's a huge thing, too. So, that's all. That's all part of it.
Yeah, I agree. I'll say my last piece of math coming together here. Fargo starting pitchers over the last, 8 games have pitched 46 innings and allowed 10 runs. Meanwhile, Lake Country starting pitching specifically, has covered 12, 25, 32. Okay, sorry, math out loud is not a fun lesson. I get that. I got 46 innings, which is the same number of innings. So they both pitched 46 innings in the past 8 games. But while Fargo has only allowed 10 runs within their starting pitching, Lake Country has allowed 30.
That's not good.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by, like, it's just, I think they've stretched it as far as they could, and that's the end result. Starting pitchers having to cover more innings, relievers struggling to get there and bail them out. It's just, we've all seen it. It's a new ball. It's a team that can ball, but it's just a little thin. That's okay. It's nothing against them. It's been a good run.
Exactly.
And again.
So, on that note, we go to the big kind of segment of the week. We're going to do a little bit different here. We're not going to do the hot and cold. We're going to switch it out for a game. It's a newer game. It's going to be different from last week's thing where it was like, stick the fork in them and then we never got to it because we're bad at this. It's true. I don't really have a name for it yet, but I'm kind of shopping the term shopper, because what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a category here and you got to fit a team into it. So let's say it's a first overall pick caliber team. That's what we're looking for. We're shopping for a team that could pick first overall. And then you got to give me, a team that would be objectively pretty bad and could use a first overall pick caliber player. These are obviously more end of year playoff based categories. There's 4 of them, so we're going to go through 4. We probably have a good amount of time for that. We're only about an hour 20 in, so we're doing pretty good on that front. But that's what we're doing here. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward.
Sure, I think I follow.
All right. So we'll open it up. Pretty easy, a solid one to start with. What we're shopping for is a contender for a title, a team that is capable of winning their league. Anyone in the core 4 leagues.
Okay. Double check how they did tonight. Yep, looks good. Check out. I like that from me. I'm saying, and I like a discount, personally.
Yeah.
I think it's a little, I think the Kansas City Monarchs are in demand. I think that's obvious.
Definitely.
A team like High Point, very in demand.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's jacking the price up. Look, there's only so many of those teams. But look, I'm a family man, and I'm looking at teams on a budget.
Yeah.
And I've actually got 2 options, and I think they're both good. Depends on what you're looking for, what you're trying to fill the pantry with.
Yeah.
I think one would be the Chicago Dogs, which is a little more mainstream. They've been hot. I like their chasing at Milwaukee. I've not been overly impressed with Milwaukee, which matters when it comes to talking about who they're going to face in a playoff run. They've now won 7 in a row. So I think Chicago could be really a problem in the playoffs. I've not been overly impressed with. I think there's. Sorry to overanalyze the playoff situation, but I think assuming Cleveland makes it in, I think there's a good chance Chicago plays Cleveland because I don't know if Milwaukee wants to deal with the travel. They might stick to King County, unless Milwaukee's playoff situation is obviously weird. Just talked about it. Yeah. But I like them against King County, and I also like Chicago against Cleveland if it comes down to it. So that's option number one. But if you're really looking for a little something off brand, get a little fancy with it. I do think that maybe Sioux Falls. Sioux Falls has been hot. They have been hot now for, I would say, about 3 weeks. It's definitely become a prolonged streak. Yeah. I don't know that I love their playoff matchups, and that's why it's a little bit more of a risky pick. But I've been impressed. I think the offense is explosive, and I do have a soft spot for explosive offenses in the playoffs. So I think they can cause havoc. You can bring a hot pitching staff, but if they get to you, if the batters can get to you, they're just going to mess you up. If you look at their recent games, they've beaten up Winnipeg. They split with Winnipeg, but they.
It's Winnipeg here. It's come on.
Well, took 2 from Sioux City, took 2 from Kansas City, took 3 in a row from Milwaukee, took 3 in a row from King County. That's what we're back to August 6th. They've only lost 4 games, and 2 of them were back-to-back against Winnipeg at the end of a long road trip. So, not a long road trip, not bad. That was just at the end of a road trip. But, yeah, I like Sioux Falls. It's a little bit off-brand, a little bit different, but if you want to get a little bit cheeky with it, I will go, yeah, that's where I think about it. What do you got?
So, I think when you're going shopping, you want the quality stuff for the main course. And really, contending for a title is that main course, even if we're getting to it a little early. Mm-hmm. And I think who has, the best quality steak in the world? Where are some of those major ones? And I think of Montreal. And what province is Montreal located in?
All right, I follow you. I see where you're going here. Yeah. I don't necessarily know. I guess I see how you got to Montreal. Fair enough. Okay, yes. The seasoning. I understand.
Yes, they are located in the great province of Quebec, the same province that the Quebec Capitals are in. Yeah. And despite a loss tonight at Sussex, which admittedly is just going to lower the price a little bit. That's really all it's going to do. They are still by far the highest quality team here. I mean, New Jersey, if we're going to try and put them into this conversation, they lost to a far worse team in Three Rivers tonight in 10 innings. So not exactly killing the game there, which also means very good night for the Valley Cats getting a win against the Boulders there too. That's going to help their cause. But regardless of that, Quebec's a team that overall has done everything they've needed to do. They had a little bit of a rocky patch there where we started to go, maybe are they the team? Are they as good as they have been? And then they immediately answered back with that. They have done nothing really to say they aren't that guy. They responded to major injuries on their team by adding who? Greg Bird. They added former major leaguer right into the lineup here, which is something of note in the Frontier League. I blanked for a second. I was going to say American Association. I was like, no, they're in the Frontier. But in the Frontier League, to get a guy of that caliber is certainly of note. It adds another bat to an already solid batting team. They're a team that can pitch. They're a team that has proven they can beat just about anyone that they want. Obviously, there is a little hesitation here, regardless of who gets in that last spot, whether it's Tri-City or New York. I suppose on some level, the Miners are still in this conversation, but, are they really in this conversation? It's the question to ask there. So as long as you can get in, I love Quebec's odds to do a lot of damage. They're currently tied for that spot there at the top of the list. If they get that bye, they either get Tri-City or they get New Jersey or New York. No matter what, I still love it in a best of 5. So figuring you can get out of the East, who in the West is going to stop you?
Yeah, great point.
The competition in the West is not really there. Obviously, some people are going to point, look at Gateway. Their record's a little inflated because of Empire State and Three Rivers, and that's what the argument's going to be. I'm going to say we ran the numbers once. Empire State's marginal at best, doesn't really move the needle there. And I would argue when your third worst team in your division is still above 500, and the grand total of above 500 teams in the West is the 3 playoff teams, we maybe shouldn't talk about parity and level of competition in the East, because the Grays aren't doing that kind of numbers. Yeah. So overall, I like Quebec a lot. I think they have a bit of a tougher road to get out of the East, but once they get out of it, so long as they're not injured, they're set up nicely.
Yeah, I'm just checking out who else we're looking at for playoff berth there. It looks like Evansville in that 3rd spot. That's right. I'm just seeing this up. Yeah, I mean, they've played all 3 the teams that are heading into the playoffs from the West, and they won all 3 series 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
So there's that. Yeah, I think it's going. I think we started talking like stake and like all that. I was ready for you to say like Missoula or one of the Montana teams. So I had to like totally shift gears on my end here.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to, by the way, I don't know.
I was thinking Missoula for a second there. But that was going to be a whole. Everyone talks about the prime cuts of meat, but there's other parts of the animal that are quality. Because the Pioneer League is not a prime cut, but there's quality.
Yeah. I would say if you want a real upset pick, you can check out Glacier, though.
Oh, we're going to get to that.
Okay. Following that, I'll let you take it.
Yep. So we'll get to that kind of dark horse thing in just a second. But before that, we have the other end of the spectrum. You have these contenders, teams that are, pretty well entrenched. But on the flip side, you have pretenders, teams that, they're paper tigers. They look good on the page, but on the field, they don't get it done. So we're looking to buy a pretender for a title.
Oh, do you want to go first on this one, or should I go first?
I suppose I can. So there's 3 teams I got highlighted here. All of it comes back to, the level of competition or the overall consistency across the year. And so, a team like Lancaster kind of jumps out to me for that. Also, I look at the challenge they're going to have. Obviously, Long Island's not doing great right now, but they're still a good team. And even if they manage to get out of that, you're looking at probably either Gastonia or High Point, the same matchup we had last year. Again, being the fight in the South. So that's certainly a challenge. But Lancaster's proven they can win a title. They're defending still. So that brings me to 2 other points. I was thinking maybe Gateway, for the reasons we just mentioned about Quebec being a very strong contender for a title. Gateway being up on a bunch of teams that really aren't that great. And their pathway here is probably going to be through Schaumburg, if we're being honest. No hate to Evansville, but we did this last year. Schaumburg's also an overall better team, a team that's still technically not out of the division title hunt yet by any means. And on top of that, has a very proven record of recent postseason success, a title, a finals appearance. They get it done when it matters. So, for that reason, Gateway does seem a little weaker. They have relatively tough competition that they have to immediately go up against. And then in the East, it does not get any easier. But the team I wind up settling on is a team we've mentioned for off-the-field reasons today. And that is Sioux City. They're just such an inconsistent team. And yeah, they've added a guy like a Nagaski in here, and that certainly helps them as well. But I look overall at their setup here, at their current situation, and I don't love anything about this team. They are, as I've said, inconsistent. They are a team that is going to have to probably play either a really hot Sioux Falls team. Sure, they may get lucky and either get a very, very mediocre Lincoln team that's currently on a 6-game losing streak and is probably going to miss the postseason on that alone, or a Fargo team that's starting to figure it out. That's not necessarily an easy thing. A team that's defending a title, a team that's been there, a team that's gone to 2 straight finals, actually, if we're going to get down to it. That's not exactly, the easiest first round matchup, but let's say you get through that. You're looking at Kansas City. That's a really tough series to go ahead and have to win. You're not looking great right there. And even if you manage to get through that, you're probably looking at either Milwaukee or Chicago on the flip side here. And I know, you have some reservations about the Milkmen, and that's fair. I had them as a team that was a borderline contender, certainly, just because I like a lot of what they have. I think if you look across the board, the numbers are good enough to where I think they're kind of sneaky enough to get to a finals. And I'm not sure how much I buy the Dogs' success as of recent, but that's a whole nother issue entirely. Either way, there's tougher teams in the East than I think Sioux City can handle. And I feel like a large chunk of the reason Sioux City is even in this conversation right now is based off of what they did in that first month of the season. And so for that alone, I feel like I got to dock them a bit because guys like Solomon Bates can only do so much on the pitching end. And overall, it just feels like a very inadequate team. So Sioux City is a pretender that I'm putting in the shopping cart.
I'm torn because I have a few teams I got to think about here. I'll be honest, I toured with the idea of the Ogden Raptors, who looked like the real deal to end the first half of the Pioneer League and have absolutely been getting pushed in since then.
Yeah.
I mean, they've lost 6 in a row, including 2 games. They gave up 38 to NoCo last week, or early this week. Just getting stomped out by Rocky Mountain too. But I don't know about all that. Glacier, I'm as convinced that they're a pretender as I am that they're a sleeper pick. Billings is a question mark, so I'm not going to go the Pioneer. The Atlantic League, they're Staten Island, obviously staring at you in the face, but I don't know, man. Probably Tri-City, honestly. Stick in the Frontier.
Oh.
I think Tri-City, again, they're that team. They're good, but when it comes down to it, they don't I don't think they've won, maybe they've won a series, but they have a losing record against both Quebec and New Jersey. I just don't see, really, I'm not confident in them handling business against Jersey in the playoff series, let alone doing it against Quebec. I just think it's too much to ask, and I do not think they're going to catch them either. Right now they just split 2, but Quebec won the last one 10-0 after losing the first one 3-2. They did take 2 out of 3 the week before that. No, they lost 2 out of 3 the week before that as well.
Looks like 6-2 versus Jersey, if I'm not mistaken.
I'll do a double check on that math because I might have looked it up from the wrong side and counted L's and dubs wrong. But if you look at Quebec, that matchup's just been terrible for them. I'll look at Jersey again here because counting ain't my specialty. 3-0 against them to start. 4-2, 6-3. Yeah, that checks out. Yeah, that's fair. I still don't love them in that matchup though. Going to be honest, I know Jersey was not at their best in those games against them. And just I feel like that offense is so good. They put up, they have, I guess, not shown that they can stop the Jersey offense for prolonged periods of time. So, if you look at the last 2 series, they won one 11-10. So they need to score 11 runs to get done. They won, another one 5-1. So they were able to hold them, but the other one they lost 9-7. Same situation. They held the Jackals to 5 runs twice, which is okay. And then they lost 16-12 to them the series before. So they're going to need to control that offense. And the first 3 was when the Jackals weren't really hitting the way they ended up hitting for the whole year. Again, the Jackals are a much different team at home than away, but if I'm honest, I did run the numbers. I do not hate them on the road. And I just did double check and they're actually pretty good at Sussex too. So when it comes down to it, I think Tri-City has the look of a team that can do it this year and breaks out, but I still think they're just a pretender, unfortunately.
I could see it. Also, they've had problems closing it out. That's something that they've struggled with. And it's not even the most guaranteed lock they make it yet. Still up 3 on the Boulders. That's certainly something of note. And they still have 2 more against them this weekend. But Boulders win both of them, which I know is a lot to ask. But if they do manage that, all of a sudden you pick up a lot of ground there. Was it 1 game difference then?
It would be a half game, I think.
Yeah, so it's right there. And who would the Boulders have left?
It's a 3-game difference now. You're right. So, sorry, I'm a little behind. So, it's a 1-game difference.
All right, yeah. And then the Boulders would have 3 at Quebec and then 4 at home against New Jersey. Admittedly, what's rough is they play Thursday night game in Quebec and then Friday doubleheader at home versus New Jersey. So that's admittedly a rough swing. But still, how that New Jersey Quebec thing shakes out matters a lot too, right? Because they're both playing for something still. And
yeah, it's also the fact that
Miners versus 3.
even going into the playoffs, the fact that odds are, I mean, sure they're battling for that top spot still, but like there's a better chance that the Jackals and Quebec can take their foot off the gas at least a day early. You know what? Honestly, for all we know, the way it works out is Tri-City secures this thing, and Tri-City doesn't have a top seed to play for and doesn't have a playoff spot to play for, and they could be rested longer than anyone else. So I'm going to hold that thought, but I never envy the team that feels like they still have to battle their way out.
But if you are Tri-City, right now you're 1 game back of a bye. So that matters a lot too. You're still in that. Now, Alasso has to shake itself out.
I guess I'll look at the Baseball Reference standings.
Gotta use those FrontierLeague.com standings.
Yeah, I know. 1 game out, yeah. That's so close. What a great race, man.
I know. This is the race we need.
Full need to cover, which I appreciate, because we've had some bad ones. I'm just trying to eyeball, I don't know, some more of the recent stuff. I mean, Tri-City, this is their worst offensive month so far, hitting well below the standard of where they've been, which is something that's interesting, and you can see it. Also, they have been against divisional competition, which we've established is better. But, something to watch.
Yep, definitely. So we move on to the penultimate shopping list item here, which means we have one more after this. But first, we have to kind of circle back to something we were touching on just a second ago, and that is we need to add a little bit of flavor to this. We got to add in some more playoff talk here, but what we need is a dark horse for the playoffs, a team that is a sneaky good team, maybe one that's going to do really well in the playoffs, maybe one that's going to kind of sneak and cruise into the postseason, something like that. That's what we're looking for in this dark horse candidate.
It's a bold take, but I kind of like Glacier in the Pioneer. I mentioned it before. They've been super underwhelming in the second half, but they still basically have the wild card locked up. Let me just double check the record on that one, make sure I'm not completely off here. But yeah, I mean, Rocky Mountain's about 3 games behind them, but Rocky Mountain's also leading their division. So if you go past Rocky Mountain, it's now a 5-game lead. And I essentially know that Colorado playing consistent enough baseball to catch Glacier, even if Glacier's been down lately. My main thing with Glacier, because it should be a murder when they play at Missoula, is it just really has not been. If you go through their head-to-head this season, they did get punked their first series against them. They lost, 4 out of 5, it turned out. And then lost 2 out of 3. And then they lost 4 out of 6. They lost 2 out of the first 2 here. Or 2 out of the last 4 here. So they're below 500 against them, but they're battling and the games have been close. And I don't know. Again, Missoula can lamp their pitching, but we're talking sleepers for a reason. We're talking what could be an upset for a reason. Missoula got upset last year. It could happen again. And if someone's going to do it, I do think it's Glacier. Glacier, oddly, despite their struggles, might also be the only other team going to playoffs that can rest their pitching about as long as Missoula can and set up their rotation the way they want, just the way that things seem to be shuffling out with the wild card.
What about Rocky Mountain, though?
Here's the thing. I don't necessarily qualify Rocky Mountain as an upset. I think Rocky Mountain's a good team. And maybe that colors my mentality on them, but I've been really impressed by the Rocky Mountain team I've been seeing this year. At least in the second half.
I was meaning more
in the second half.
Yeah, I was meaning more in just the general team that can beat Missoula sense here. Like them and Ogden are about equal. Although, I mean, if we're going recency, I mean, they have literally flipped their records. So, I mean, that speaks a lot there. But, like, overall, it just, I guess. I mean, if we're looking at it from that perspective, the Vibes probably wouldn't be a dark horse if they're going to wind up leading their own division. Yeah.
And there's weird stuff of, like, the Vibes, I think, are fairly legit. Just looking at some of the better offenses in this league, I mean, Grand Junction is a great one. They just played Grand Junction to help them to 13 runs over 3 games. And then they did give up 15 of them in one game, but then they held them to like a 7-4 spot, which is completely normal for facing them. Before that, they held them to 16 runs across 3 games, which is great. Northern Colorado, they held them to a 6 and an 8, which if you've been following the Pioneer, is a pretty good deal playing Northern Colorado. I don't know. I like it. I think they have a shot to actually be legit, and that's why I didn't necessarily want to call them my sort of upset pick or spoiler or whatever we're going with their sleeper pick. I do think Glacier would be more sleeper because their record against Missoula isn't even that impressive, but they've been playing close games. If I recall, they pushed them into that like bonus round a couple times, and it made it a little bit complicated. So that's where my head's at when it comes to them, at least, and trying to go a little outside the box on that call.
So I get that, and I agree with that. And it's just with the Pioneer, everything's, it's hard to really call. I also just have a hard time picking against Missoula for anything. So
I know, me too.
yeah. So that's a hard part there. So, like, I think, can they beat Missoula? I'm like, yeah, I guess. And I mean, if you can beat Missoula, you can win the whole thing. It's just knowing you're getting Missoula in round 1 is such an uphill battle, man. So that's what keeps me from going a route similar to that. For me, I'm going with a team that you briefly mentioned as a pretender, and that's Staten Island. And the reason I have them here is that North is still wide open. And I feel like if they can get in, there's fairly low expectations here. You sneak in, you can do some damage here. A Long Island team that, by and large, hasn't looked great this second half. Is that a product of taking their foot off the gas? Probably, possibly. We don't quite know. We also know that Staten Island, even with tonight's result, has historically played Long Island tough. They have gotten their fair share of wins against Long Island. And I feel like it's the kind of thing that, with a low expectation, a team that have really had to fight and claw to get in, I feel like they could do some serious damage, and I feel like they could give Long Island a real scare. And if you could just get through Long Island, which I know is, if you could just scale the Grand Canyon, but if you really can, you have as good a shot as anyone. Like we saw a Gastonia team and a High Point team that we said were very confidently 2 of the better teams in independent ball last year, lose to a Lancaster team which kind of, was really good for 3 or 4 months. And that was their story. And so I just kind of feel like Staten Island has that kind of dark horse ability here. I don't know if I have any sort of statistical backing to go with it, to run with it, but I just feel like they are that kind of team. And there's always one that sneaks in the Atlantic League that then does something. And seeing as it's still wide open over there, I don't see why it can't be Staten Island.
That's an interesting one.
Like, I understand the argument against it. I definitely get it. But just overall, I feel like there is something there.
I do agree there's something there. I think it's a bit of an optimistic take. If I'm trying to help you sell that, I would say their last X number of games against Long Island here. Let's see. They lost tonight, but before that, they split series with Long Island, lost 2 out of 3, lost 2 out of 3. They're winning a game every time they play Long Island, and they've won a series against them, so they know they can do it. Now, even they did that when Staten Island was actually down and Long Island was up, for the most part. So that would be the angle, probably. It's a 3-game series in the first round, if I recall. No, it's a 5-game set, isn't it? That's going to make it more difficult.
See, I'd counter by saying it makes it a little bit easier on them simply because they have more games to recover from a bad outing.
Okay. Yeah, 1 blow-up doesn't cost. That's fair. I would say it's 5 games having to shut down that lineup. That was my first thought. That was my concern.
I'm not really concerned about shutting down that lineup, as that may be
They've
famous
not been
last
hot,
words,
for sure.
but I feel like they can be able to do that. Like, when I look at Staten Island, I look at a team that's like, avoid the blow up. If you avoid the blow up, it's fine. That's how they win, by avoiding it. And they're perfectly capable. Look at like the High Point series, for example. They were able to control it. They had the one bad game, game 1, and then they come back and they put up 27 runs across 2 games. So they're able to do that.
Right.
They can play a closer, more hard-fought one. Maybe something like Southern Maryland's a good example. They sweep them, and they didn't allow more than 6 in any particular game, and they won by some close margins there as well. I think there's enough there where it's like, okay, they're able to win games where they have to. I mean, overall, like I said, I just feel like there's a team there that can do something. And it's hard to really judge them because they've been so over the map. But there's enough there where I feel like this is a team that, avoiding the blow up, they can get by and they can do what they got to do.
Yeah, I think there's an argument to be had there. They have some solid pitching, and when they can line that pitching up, it definitely looks good. Capuano, obviously, he's a big piece of this. Hartman, another sub-4. I mean, if they can line those 2 up
Pinero's
and get good outings out of them, plus, Pinero is where I was going, they could probably hold with just those 3, you know. And then from there, their bullpen's good. Their bullpen has multiple guys who can get it done. Yeah, I can see it causing an issue. Yeah, I'm just kind of doing a side-by-side with them, Long Island. It's hard not to in this situation.
Plus, I look at it, I'm not going to say Long Island doesn't have a stronger pedigree, but there are guys on the Fairy Hawks that maybe can't go 1 for 1, but can hold their own in certain situations. And if Yoshi was still here, I'd feel even better about this.
Yeah, I agree. I also don't like, I mean, they have a couple of bullpen arms that aren't there anymore. That makes me nervous, but I'm like looking at I'm looking at, okay, 7th and 9th inning, like who are they going to put out of the pen on you? Payano, great option. Oh man, it's tough though. Yeah, that's where I start to worry. Can they finish the job late against an offense like Long Island? That's the thing. And yeah, they've shut them down times, but it's 5 games. It's a lot. It's a lot to ask. Out of a team which, frankly, I don't even know if they built it with playoffs in mind.
You don't even shut them down for 5. You need to shut them down for 3.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're going to shut them. That's an optimistic way to look at it for sure. But look, let's not sleep on the fact that Long Island's not been impressive lately. So that's the other thing here. I mean, I'll give you that one. I think I almost picked them. That's fine. I vibe with it.
They're a dark horse for a reason.
They're a dark horse for a reason. I think they have a better shot probably than mine. And I think that, I can see it. That's the thing. Like, I can see that they have a road, and I think the road's narrow, but I think it's there, and that's the main thing.
Going to the final item on the list, that would be a total underachiever. We need someone that underachieved this year. A team that we came into this season saying, this team is good. This is a team that will do great things this year. This is a title threat. And they weren't even a pretender. They just couldn't live up to the hype in any way. This is I don't want to call him a bum, but this is a guy that, he should have been more than he turned out to be. We need a total underachiever.
Do you have a thought off the top of your head on this one?
I have 3 that I kind of wrote down here, all in varying degrees. So I could go if you need a second.
Go ahead. I'm going to do a quick double check to make sure this is exactly what I'm thinking about here.
So there's 2 teams that I'm going to list first here that I'm not going with, but certainly have a case here. Fargo is the immediate one, a team that, won a championship last year, one of the better series we've seen in recent years too. Back-to-back years making the final. Revamped, looked like a solid team, a strong team coming into the year, a team that should, if not win the division, at the very least be really close, challenging for it. And they've turned to a team that's a borderline playoff team. That probably looks like a round one exit, and if not, will be short work for Kansas City in round two. So that is certainly an underachiever, but they're not the most, because they still look like a playoff team, and once you're in, anything can happen. Spire City is one which, I thought about. They're not really the respectable team we thought. I know Will picked them to go very far, if not win the whole thing. So that obviously is not happening. I know a lot of people were high on Spire City, thought they had some real potential here. I may not have been one of them, but, they were a team that had some expectation, and they just certainly have not lived up to it in really any way. But the team that comes to my mind immediately is a team that's been very respectable in past years. It's been a playoff team perennially, essentially, and they just have not had a good year at all, and that is the Washington Wild Things. That is a team that I feel like is totally underachieved. They have won some games of recent, come around a little bit as a recent. They may manage to make this up into fourth in the division, but they are very much in jeopardy of finishing under 500. They're very much a team that was the second best or the best team in the regular season last year, depending on who you ask. And overall, you felt like maybe this roster isn't as strong as it was last year, but it still is a very strong roster. It may not be 60 wins strong, but it's certainly, in the 50s, probably mid to high 50s level. This is a team that's going to make the postseason, a team that's going to really contend, that's going to have a shot. And you look across how things are shaken out, and it's a very weak division too. Like Erie, 35 wins. Florence, 35 wins. Windy City, 37 wins. Joliet, 42 wins. That's how it all sits right now. I mean, 9 games above 500 is the worst playoff team, and that's nothing to, sneeze at. But a 48-win team in the East, that puts you where Sussex is. It puts you you have a shot, but you're not looking like you're going to make it. And so when you have these teams pretty consistently, you kind of expect to do better than 12 games out of first place. You kind of expect to do better than 6.5 games out of a playoff spot. At the very least, make it to the wild card, host the wild card. There was an expectation here, and I'm not going to say, championship or bust. Very seldom is that ever a realistic expectation across all of sport, just because playoffs are so much of a crapshoot, especially with baseball, where you play 100+ games and then it comes down to 1 3-game series. Anything can happen. You can just have one dude have really bad allergies one game, and that costs you a series. So anything can happen in that. So I'm never going to really use playoff success as the only category make or break. I will use the regular season as a measurement, though, because it's such a large sample to work off of. We know if you're good or not. And overall, Washington just has not been good. There hasn't been a stretch where you've said, this is a good team, this is a dominant team. It's been anywhere from they're a mediocre team to this is not a good team. And obviously, there is a come down period at a certain point. You can only be good for so many years before you have a letdown year. Quebec had one of those, but at a certain point, you have to call it what it is. And even if it is due, it's still a very underachieving year, a total underachieving year in my mind for Washington.
Yeah, man, I'll give you that. I don't really even have like a counter to that. Just, I'm with you. I think I think that's a good read. I came in without knowing much about Washington. I knew like they had struggled in the past, but like they were definitely trying to get together, and it never came through. Definitely the most jarring thing to me watching their games has been just how often like there was not much in the way like life from them. It just that I feel like we don't talk about Washington much. It's just because a lot of ways, and I'm trying to say this, I'm sort of tiptoeing to not be feeling terrible about what I say, but like it's just kind of a nothing team. It's been a very empty year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really, I think that speaks to exactly what you're saying. It's just a disappointment, man. Didn't end up where they thought, and that's frustrating.
Especially if you want to look at
the being a Washington Wild Things fan.
Yeah, especially if you look at like the actual everyday starters from a batting perspective. Who do you point to?
Yeah.
Wagner?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, Lagrange? Yeah, like he's probably the guy. A 304 hitter with 19 home runs. Brancato had a good year with 26 home runs, batting .275. I mean, Dubrul also looks pretty solid. You know, a good average hitter, put some runs across, stole some bags. Robert Chaika looked really good as a rookie, so there's stuff to build off of there. Andrew Czech provided some offense there. There's a couple of individual performers, but once you get outside of those really five guys, what else really is there? You know, like Tristan Peterson, he's a pretty, average guy on this level. Nova, again, a pretty average catcher on this level. Maybe a little extra pop than you'd expect. Nick Gatta did not live up to really the billing you need him to be as a veteran. Not to say he had a bad year, just not what he needed to be. You know, everybody else, again, just like not what he needed to be. Pitching wise, we could look at that too here. And I mean, like, I'm trying to find, examples of guys that really did solid here. And like, outside of one or two, again, like I'm hard pressed here. Like Christian James looked good in the bullpen, and Kobe Foster proved that last year wasn't a fluke. That's pretty much what I come across here. Justin Goose and Brown also look good, but I mean, at this level, I kind of expect them to look really good. Everybody else was either average to below average. I mean, Zach Kirby also looks like he could be something to build off of going into next year too. But like, there really wasn't any pitching, and there wasn't much batting to supplement it. That's not a winning recipe. So who do you have?
I'm actually going to, I'm going to stick around with. I'm just trying to necessarily figure out how I want to approach this, because I mean, I feel like they're technically friends with the program, but hey, it is what it is. Going same league, same division. Ooh. And I'm going to say Windy City, man.
Windy City, okay.
Windy City, bringing in Richie Sexton. There's good excitement around there. Obviously, first-time manager is never an easy thing in indie ball, but it's just been an underwhelming team. They've never been a legitimate contender. The offense has been really bad. I mean, what I look at is like comparing year to year, right? I mean, Last year they had the third worst offense in the league. This year they have the third worst offense in the league, except it's scoring a half run less. Last year they had the fifth worst pitching staff in the league. Now it's the seventh worst, and they are giving up, less runs per game, which is good. But it's things like, when I look at it, I look at guys who stayed on the team. Pitchers, for the most part, did okay. They had guys like Cal Jureskovic. He took a step back this year. I think they were looking for him to step up as a 26-year-old guy. Looking at guys like Sebastian Selway, didn't get much work in. He looked good in the work in the time he did, but he didn't make the contributions they wanted. Then you got guys like Kenny Matthews went backwards, and Justin Miller was the other one who he did okay. He kind of stayed about where he was, but he did improve a bit, but you didn't see the improvement that you necessarily want to see in the guys who hung around from year to year. So last year against the league average, they were 0.3 runs per game, in run differential, worse than the league average. Now they're a run and a quarter worse per game, so that's a huge step backwards. That's an extra run per game. They've fallen behind against league average. They just didn't move forward. But my biggest thing is, and this is a bit of an oddity, but it's the kind of thing that I picked up on, and I've confirmed with some people around there. I don't know if the Richie Sexton thing has worked out. I would be surprised to see him come back next year. They have, as I said, the offense was third worst in the league last year. It's third worst in the league this year, with the big difference being they're a half run worse. Despite that, they have only had let me double check my number. 14 batters this season. That is not many. I mean, for comparison's sake, they had 24 last year. Now, often I think like roster churn is a sign of instability and could be a problem, but in this instance, when it's not working, like that just shows that there's no, yeah, and it shows a real lack of avenues to maybe find new options and to find, I guess from a front office and manager standpoint, it does worry me that like he seems to not have the connections to bring new people in. He's stuck with a team where he's like, yeah, these are my guys. Like the team OPS is a 680, but there's no move to make any changes there. I mean, that's almost 100 points lower than league average. If you look at their batting averages across the team, I mean, you've really got, half the starting lineup on any given night hitting under 250. There's just plenty. I mean, it is a target-rich environment if you want to start improving things. And one, I think that's partially maybe I'm torn between if it's a lack of connections or it's a lack of energy for doing things like that, a lack of knowledge for how to go about doing things like that, or even if it's a player mentality of the last time he was in the dugout, I think he was playing ball. And like maybe it's it's tough to look at a guy and say like, hey, like we gotta let you go to make room for a guy who we think is going to give us a better shot. But yeah, it was. For them, it is just the stagnation of this was, I know you had, I'm going to blank on his name, but with the GM, I guess, from the team on, and he was talking about, there was high hopes for this year and they were trying to get back on their winning ways because it's been a long time. And then just to see this again and be like, okay, like I would be very surprised if Sexton comes back next year. He just does not seem to vibe with it. The energy seems low. And that's just what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing. And it's just disheartening to just be like, all right, you got to start this again. We've got to go out and find our guy again. Hopefully, he likes our roster. We don't need to completely rebuild. Maybe we do. Hopefully he has good connections. We, have to, reintroduce him to our fans. We have to get the fans to try to come back out after another losing year. Like it's brutal. This was really being pegged as a year where they could show some motion and they were hoping for good things, and just to see it go the way it has is just crushing. Yeah. So that's my pick.
I mean, it's definitely a good pick. Mike Vershave was the guy we had on, by the way, GM of the team.
Right. But, very nice guy, by the way. I'm glad you had him on. That was an interesting interview.
Yeah. I like talking to him too. At first when we called him, he was in the middle of actually, removing the snow from his sidewalk. So he had to call us back later on. I tried to get him to do the interview while he was, snow blowing. But that did not take. I thought it was going to be a lot more entertaining if he did it while he was shoveling, but, I guess not. Any case, but I think you also make a good point there where it was an opportunity to show something, show some growth, show some movement one way or the other, even if it was a worse overall record year, but there was a couple of individual standouts. There was a period where it's like, okay, it was bad, but there was at least a 3-week period where they strung together a solid record. And their losses started to look more like they're just not good enough versus they don't know what they're doing. Then you could say, okay, well, they're not being outplayed. The talent's just not there. That'd be one thing. It's another thing when it's just like they don't know what they're doing. And the 17 batters is part of it, where you're one of the worst batting teams in the league, especially when you think, okay, there's a travel team in this league. And you're not trying anything new. And then you look at a guy like, say, a Jarius Richard, and he goes to Gateway, and he has just a phenomenal year compared to what he did in Windy City. Now, obviously, there's ballpark factors and whatnot there, but it also speaks volumes to, the overall just flip in performance that can't really be contributed to a ballpark. Right? So it speaks a bit to the overall organization. And I think that's a really good point here. I was kind of surprised he didn't almost go Sussex County, because I feel like Sussex.
I almost did, man. Yeah. I almost did. But the new manager was the thing for them. Like, the new manager was a sign of hope for Windy City. The new manager in Sussex was seen, I think, as a vulnerability. Yeah. So that was my deciding factor on that one.
Fair. And honestly, too, for a while they were looking good over in Sussex.
Yeah. And I also, the funny thing was, like, yeah, that's the thing. I could see Sussex County being like we've seen this work. Like, that's one of those baseball things where it's like the Angels. Like, they invest in the after the trade deadline, or at the trade deadline, they make the investment and the team starts losing. And you're sitting there, you're like, you've seen this work. Like, why isn't it working? And then on the flip side, you got the Phillies, whose offense was trash, even though on paper it looks great. And the Phillies just had to stick with it and be like, yeah, like we just have to bet that this is going to turn out. And it has turned around a good bit. And at the same time, like I see Sussex being like, we've seen this work. It just has stopped working. And like, it's harder to make changes. It's a little harder for me to understand from the Windy City perspective when this immediately did not work. Like this was the team that last year struggled. I mean, it struggled in a lot of ways, not to be that guy, but like they struggled offensively, certainly, and that's the most obvious way. But then to come out and immediately have issues, like sure, the pitching was better, honestly, right off the bat, but those first games just were 8 in the first and then proceed to go 1-1, 4-2, 4-3. Pause it. We're a week in, 8 days in, 9 days in. That's the moment. I've seen enough to know I've seen too much. Like, shout out to anybody who's like quotable in League of Their Own. That's where it has to be like, all right, we have an off day coming up you're coming in your Monday off day on the 21st, is the 19th. Someone should already be making the list of who we're calling and what we're asking about. There's going to be other teams after a week having the same moment of, this isn't the team we thought we had when we were playing whoever the hell during our preseason. We need to look around. And you also will have guys who just had contract purchases, so we can make some moves. There's no movement. Like there's no, that's the red flag right there. It was not like they came out hot out of the gate. They saw something and then for whatever reason, they just couldn't get it going because of injuries or whatever the hell else. It was never there. And they still did not adjust course or anything. And that's what makes me go, what is the plan here?
Yeah. I mean, it speaks a lot. It speaks a lot to the organization as a whole, especially in a year where you're having such a spotlight on you between the guy that is your manager and a former major leaguer and the All-Star game itself. It says a lot. So that does it for the Shopper game this week. I think it worked out pretty well. I think
it was long, but I liked it. Yeah.
I think we got some really good quality baseball discussion on that. We still have one thing left to get to, by the way, so we should probably get to that and get through this quickly.
Luck editing.
Yeah. This is a tomorrow morning problem. Props and predictions here. So we're going to do some day of release editing. Oh boy, fun for me. 3 predictions. We'll run through them real quick. If you have anything to say about them, go ahead and say them. I have Cleburne will be a playoff team. I don't know who's going to get bounced. I kind of expect it to be Lake Country, but Cleburne getting that last playoff spot, I think will be pretty well secure by the next time we record. New York wins the series against Tri-City, but loses the next one to Quebec. That you could tell I wrote before an 8-3 loss today, but, I still think it's possible. They got to win 2 in a row, but I think it's tough to win them both. Realistically, they win one, lose the other one. They're still in a good spot to try and make their move. It's just they're going to need some help at this point, and there's no real way around that.
Yeah, that's right.
And the final prediction is, at some point during the week, Gastonia and High Point will flip in their spot in the standing. So Gastonia will go into first, even if it's only for a brief moment. But I think they're going to flip at some point.
I feel like Gastonia will make an appearance in first place, that's for sure. Do I already forget the first ones you said? Yes, of course. I was a little bit distracted trying to look something up as you said it, and I was like, well, okay, this is not my best move.
It was Cleburne being a playoff team and then New York splitting their next 2 series.
I would say I'm on board with the Boulder splitting their next 2 series. I'm there for that.
Yeah.
Cleburne, oh, Jesus. Oh, man, it's so hard to predict anything on Cleburne. What the hell are they? I mean, sure, yeah, because Lake Country's the one chasing them. So it's more, sure. Lake Cleburne's a playoff team mainly because I don't think Lake Country is a playoff team.
That was kind of my reasoning too. So
sorry, I made it a negative.
You're not wrong. Any case, props for the week. The 2 we got here. DJ Burt. He's a guy we have not talked about, but we really should because he's on a 57-game on-base streak.
I know, and he's like popped on at least once on SportsCenter Top 10, maybe twice.
Yeah. So, like, he's having a really good year, and we're just not talking about him for some reason. So, he's going to get some mention here. I have his streak reaching 59.5 games. The over or the under?
So, we need 6 games.
57 is where he's at right now.
Oh, 57 now. Good God, that escalated quickly. These are running together. I mean, yeah, he makes it.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
See, here's the thing. Like, 2 is really nothing, but once you've gotten up this high, man, it's like, oof. Like, but it's on base, so he just needs a walk.
Yeah, I don't want to, like, and I don't want to, like, undersell the streak. It's an incredible streak.
Yeah.
And I know I'm saying 2 things at once here. One is, I think it's an incredibly impressive streak, and that's what we're talking about. But I also think, like, it is easier to achieve, and it does play to his strengths in a way that's a little bit different. Where I think he has just an innate ability to get on base, and I mean, he's just obviously getting after it. But the thing is, despite this whole streak, his on base percentage is still, like, outside the top 10 in the league, which is kind of fun.
Speaks volumes about what it was before the streak.
Yeah, fair point. But yeah, he hasn't walked as much as you would think for this, but he also hasn't gotten hit by as many pitches. It's a very odd kind of streak, honestly. I'm tempted to be like, but he's playing Spire City. I believe in him there. And he's got 1 against Southern Maryland, but they're not playing Daryl Thompson, who, by the way, welcome back, Daryl Thompson. He had a good outing last night, or tonight, Friday, it would be. So last night, probably, for listening on a Saturday or another day, whatever. So I think they're avoiding him, though, which is a good thing, because anytime, no matter the age or the layoff or the injury, anytime you avoid Daryl Thompson, it's a good day for the boys in the lineup.
Yeah. I'll take the over on it, just to be fun.
I'm taking it, too. Yeah.
But, like, if it came short and was at 59 exact, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I agree. It's a tough one, especially mid-road trip.
Yeah. So, final...
I'm choosing to be believing in it. I'm with it.
Fair. Final prop. Empire State finishes the year, and obviously they won't be at this exactly when we record next, but I think we'll be close enough to be able to determine this. Finishes the year 42.25 games back of first. Normally we go with half, but because you can be a half game back, we got to go with quarter if we want the under. So over under 42.25 games.
Ooh.
I believe they're at 38 right now. They're either 38 or 39.
I think we already talked, maybe not in a straight up like plus minus like prop bet way, but about how many games they'd win. I think that we discussed whether 20 was in play, and I said it was. I'm regretting that now.
Let's see, Ottawa, New Jersey, and wait, what the hell? So, you know it's weird. At the very least, those 2 New Jersey games are not listed as road games. It's probably because it's Skyline, so they probably call it a neutral site, but...
Interesting, okay.
Even still. Regardless...
On the Frontier League?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 3 against Sussex, 2 against Ottawa, 2 against New Jersey.
Yeah, and they're, 39 back? 39 and a half?
38, I think. 38.5. Yeah, 38.5. 20 is going to be tough for them to reach, no doubt about that.
I know. All right. Oh, okay, that's right. Jackals lost 2. You said 42.5? 42.25?
Yeah, 42.25, I believe I said.
Oh, God. Yeah, I think they're 42.25 back.
Okay, so you're taking the over on it. They'll be 42.5.
Yeah, I'm going to say more than 42.5 behind.
Okay, so with first place, so you assume 2 losses to New Jersey off the bat. So that's going to knock them back to 40.5. Then it's Ottawa there. It comes down to how many more wins do they have in them? And they beat Sussex, and they played Sussex tight. And I think they beat Ottawa, too. I know they beat Ottawa. I think they got 2 more wins in them, to be honest. So 2 more wins, and I feel bad taking the under because I feel like it could very well easily be 42.5, and then I'm done. But that said, I'll take the under. I'll be optimistic about these guys. They fought hard all year. I think they got a little bit more in them. I think they got another 2 wins, and I think that keeps them from going over that edge. Give me the under.
All right. My only thing, because my whole answer just comes down to if there's 2 games against the Jackals, I have to assume the Jackals can finish with them. I don't know, but
saw 6 man.
Maybe not. Maybe the new van. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Point is, that means they're already then 40.5 back. So we'll see.
All right. We'll see. I'll take the under. So
that's the last one you had.
Yeah, that was all we had. So that'll do it.
My update on this was we already have the existing prop bet on American Association MVP home run total, whether or not it'll be over or under 26.5.
All right.
And Max Murphy is now 26.
Oh, he's right at it. He's right against it.
Yeah, he is. And Josh Altman's hot right now. He's at 23. Watch him. He's not
24. Altman has 24.
20. Jesus.
Servo's at 23
so I'm
too.
good about that one.
Yeah. Did I take the over or did I take the under on that?
We both said over.
Okay, thank God. Yes, that was looking
I
pretty
think
good.
we both also said over on Missoula going over a 7-game win streak last week, and they got to 8 before losing to Boise.
Oh, thank God. You know,
I'm 6-0 on props right now. You're 5-1.
Oh, good. Okay, we're doing pretty decent. The only thing here is, and the only way I think this goes wrong, is if Chris Herman steals this. I don't think Herman has 5 home runs in like 8 games. I don't think he has that. But
no, his numbers are disturbed. They're so good.
Yeah, so that's why I see like there's a world in which he wins it.
Yeah, no, there definitely is. I love the way he plays. He's fun to watch.
Yeah. Oh, God. But
We should wrap this thing up, my guy.
Yeah, just the
I
immediate.
realize what time it is.
I know, yeah, but like the last point I have is
my bad.
Every case Herman has, and for every case Murphy has, Altman has a case that's just as strong. Like if it comes between Altman and Murphy, it's Murphy. But if it becomes between like Altman and Herman, I think Altman's the better pick.
Yeah. Oh no, I agree. I like Altman over Herman. I mean, the average is so hard to ignore, though. And people who vote for MVP love average. Altman and Murphy are both hitting 290. He is hitting 358. At least going into today.
Yeah, he's at 356. He dropped a little bit, and Altman's at 289.
I mean,
just 3 home runs make a difference.
Look, Brian Torres.
Yeah, Brian Torres has been on fire average-wise for a while.
I know, 51 Ks and 412 plate appearances. It's kind of wild.
Yeah. Last year he was good, too. Just look at that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. People love him. We've talked about him before.
Holy God, I didn't realize he had nearly 70 stolen bases this year.
I know, right? It's going.
Yeah,
Merrick Schlupp, by the way, had a damn game the other day. I forget exactly what the box looked like, but he's been playing well. I think is he routinely starting for Lake Country right now? I think
probably.
So. Yeah, but I like him.
Yeah.
While we're talking about it.
Yeah, and I got one last thing to check here, being that where I stole. Okay, Richard says.
Mark Schuck, Schlupp out of the Czech Republic. Shout out.
Hell yeah. Richard's 69 nice stolen bases right now.
Nice.
Oh, is he going to reach that magic number of 75? Oh, it's going to be tight. It's going to be tight. It's going to be tight.
Hey, man, I'll go back to that Merrick Schlupp for a third time here.
Yeah.
Shout out to him, by the way. College kid, gets out of college, playing at North Greenville this year, jumps right into the American Association, and has casually 24 games going into tonight, 363, 408, 681 on that slash line. That's 7 homers. That's getting it done. It's good for a 1 dot plus OPS, man.
Nice.
I like that from him. Keep an eye on that guy.
Yeah. All right. So I think we should probably end this before it goes on any longer, because already I'm looking at 2.5 hours of audio just to edit. So I'm probably looking at like 3.5 hours of editing to do tomorrow morning. So we're looking at like a noon release for all of you listening. So, yeah. You want to do some plugs, and then I could do some plugs, and then we can leave?
Yeah, keep an eye on Indie Ball Nation on socials and YouTube. It's been a tough couple weeks work-wise, so I've been kind of laying low, but getting a little more frequent again on that. I have a few content things stashed. I'm coming up in a week of vacation, so I'm planning to chill and get caught up on some stuff. Also got not one, but two potentially big stories got cooking up. So they might drop as long as I can get the right sourcing on it. And, talking a little bit of some early, league shuffling, I guess, for lack of a better term, league restructuring with,
we're talking college football level realignment.
Yeah, it is. It does have that energy. So keep an eye on that one, for that story, and we'll see what else we can get going.
These are going to leave some leagues looking like the Pac-12. And other leagues are going to feel like the ACC. And I think it's fair to say is going to be kind of like the Big Ten.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but in those terms, that'll probably appeal to the Midwest demographic. They'll understand exactly what we're saying now. But, look, you got to make it simple for them. They're common man of the land. So, you got to make it simple.
You're man of the people.
Exactly. See, if you want to continue to follow this Midwest slander, which is one of the things I'm very good at, you can do so at Indie Ball Pod. We really like to slander them over there, but they honestly just like to be acknowledged. So that's okay. You can keep doing it to them.
I'm pro flyover country, by the way. Just getting in there. Don't love me.
If you'd like to go ahead and apply to be the new co-host of this show, you can do so. We get rid of these flyover people.
That's fair.
And, you could also do that on Indie Ball Report and all the other channels, or on quite literally every platform. So rate, review, subscribe. You know how to do that. So, yeah, there's that. Normally, I'd like to do is there anything else left to add here? But the thing is, whenever we go like 2.5 hours, there just simply is nothing else left to add of substance. So, until next time, don't forget to play ball.